So today I'm going to do a video where I want to test two of my cameras that I have in ideal circumstances. So right now it's nighttime. I want to document something. I want to get some pictures of this flooding, which is due to the high tides, and it just happens to be nighttime. So I want to get some pictures and compare the D500 and the A6400 and see which camera will do the best job at shooting in this unideal situation. What's the noise like? What's the IS work like on these lenses that I have? I have the kit 16-50 lens on the A6400 and the Sigma 17-50 2.8 on Nikon D500. I'm going to shoot with them at the same apertures and try to match the settings, but we'll just see what gives us the best result here in this situation. So get started shooting. So I got pictures of both of those cameras last night. I got everything I wanted to get, the best I could in the situation I had. It was sort of like half test, half I did want to get those pictures. So I went and got them. So I added all the pictures to Lightroom and I organized them a little bit. So I'm just going to make a habit of putting the Sony A6400 on the right and the Nikon on the left. And what I'm doing for all the pictures, I'm taking off all the sharpening that Lightroom puts on there so we can see exactly what the raw file gives us, what it gave us automatically. Now when shooting these pictures, I just wanted to do it as quickly as possible, and I left it on mostly auto everything, auto white balance, while I left them both on aperture priority because I wanted them to both be at 3.5 all the time. So I just let it do whatever else it wanted, and it was sort of interesting seeing what they defaulted to. Okay, so now I've taken the sharpening off all the pictures, and let's go to the first picture. Here is a picture of the road, and you can see it's totally flooded. Back there is a canal, and that's what I was trying to get in the picture. But this is real, nighttime, really dark, and let's see what settings both of these cameras chose. This one right here is the A6400, and it's on ISO 6400, which it seemed to like default to that a lot. It didn't want to go higher than that most of the time. So what it did is it compensated by lowering that shutter speed to 1/6, and of course, aperture was at 3.5 most of the time. So the colors look okay. You can see, when in this view, it sort of looks okay. But when you zoom in, you'll see it's extremely grainy, and the low shutter speed made it more blurry than the other camera decided to do. Now let's go to the D500. Now the D500 seems to have chosen a faster shutter speed rather than a lower ISO. So this one, for example, this same picture, it's taken it at 51,200, and definitely way noisy, but the colors look okay. That's one thing that it's good at, is keeping nice colors. The A6400 has a little bit more of a green tint to it, but that could just be fixed by white balancing. This picture seemed to be sort of comparable for both, and let's see which one we're on. We are on the A6400 right now, and just looking at it at this view, it looks just fine. If you print it, it'll probably look just fine and totally acceptable. And again, we're at 6400 ISO max and 1/3 shutter speed. I don't know why it chose f4. I probably changed that on accident when I was there. Now the D500, that same situation. Here's the same picture. At this point I set the minimum shutter speed much lower, but it still chose the higher shutter speed out of the both at 1/10 of a second, and the ISO of course is much higher at 25,600. And here I do see, of course, more noise than the other one, but the colors look really nice. The contrast looks really nice as well in the picture. I'll put them next to each other. So on the right is the A6400, and to the left is the D500, and it looks like the D500 chose to make this picture a little bit brighter. And the colors do look better, and of course this is raw, so there are no picture profiles on there. This is just what comes out. But of course, since the A6400 chose to shoot at a lower ISO and lower shutter speed, it has less noise, and it's actually doing a pretty good job at stabilizing as well at the 1/3 shutter speed. Okay, here's a picture that I actually took from the canal side. I'm right like on the edge of the canal. So this is the picture I took right from the canal. So I'm looking into that same street from the canal, and here you can see that the water is just flowing right in from the canal onto the street. So this is the A6400, and it's shot at 1/5 of a second, and again at the 6400 ISO that it likes to max out at for this type of thing. And stabilization looks like it worked pretty good, nice and sharp. Let's go to the D500. The D500 gives a lot more color. It has more of a yellow tint that could probably be fixed in the white balance. But of course, again, 25,600 ISO and 1/13 shutter speed. So again, it shows a lot higher, but it's also a bit brighter as well. This is a picture I would probably use though, but I'd rather use the Sony's, I think, because it's still sharp and it's a lower shutter speed. I'm going to raise this exposure too so you can see a little bit more of what's going on there. Lower those highlights a little bit, not that much. Give it some more contrast. And I don't think it needs much more saturation, but we'll just put that on there. And I'll just make some quick adjustments to the D500 to see if I can get them to be comparable. I don't know, even though it's more grainy, I just think I like that D500 look. Just a little bit more contrasty. Let's put them next to each other. And to the right is the A6400, to the left is D500. And, you know, aside from this picture being really interesting, you know, I think I like the Nikon better. Let's make them a little brighter to see what happens. Okay, so raising the exposure, which one looks nicer? And let's add some noise reduction to both and see what kind of product we get. So here's what we come out with on both fairly similar images. None are going to be totally sharp. And I think both really do tell the story, but you tell me your opinions on which one you think is better. I'll do one last picture because I think this one's very interesting. And this picture I actually took years ago, just documenting this, and this is so much higher. This tide is so much higher than it was back then. So let's get back to here. And this is the picture I took all those years ago. So let's see how they both look on both cameras. This one is at ISO 6400, so it must be the A6400. That's it. So this one I took at 1/8 of a second shutter speed, and I tried to match up the framing as best I could. But you know, I was wading through this water, and it was late at night, so nothing's probably gonna be perfect. But let's see how the other one looks. Here's the D500 version, and it actually stuck to 30th of a second shutter speed, and it went up in ISO as usual again. Let's put them next to each other, and I'll change the white balance on that one to see how it looks as well. That same white balance. And this one, the Nikon seems to give you a little bit more detail. You know, it's not perfectly exact, but for some reason that contrast that it has does a little bit more for it. So I know on the right, the A6400 is not as bright, so I'm going to brighten it up a tiny bit. And let's zoom into that street sign to see the difference in sharpness. I know I'm zoomed in a tiny bit more on the other one, but they're both pretty, you know, they're both pretty readable. Which one do you think is better? So that's all I'm going to show you. Just tell me your opinions. What do you think of these two cameras? How they react automatically? I know if I had more time and I was doing a different review, I would probably do something more like planning every single shot and taking more time, getting the same settings and everything to see how they react. But this is just how they are going out there and shooting, not prepared, not doing anything, just being in the moment, which sometimes you are. And this is what you get. So thanks for joining me, and if I post these pictures anywhere, I'll paste the link. Thanks.